Hello, and welcome to this promotional video for the Canadian Society of Painters and Watercolor Workshop Series. This is one of numerous workshops that's going to be offered by the Canadian Society of Painters and Watercolor, and we hope you'll come and join us and be part of this great opportunity to do some learning together. My name is Brian Turner. I'm a watercolorist in the Ottawa area. You can check out my website at brianturnerart.com. The goal, of course, of these workshops is to help us deal with some of the common challenges we face as artists, such as, seriously, another picture ruined by sticking my finger in front of it. So we hope these will be useful for you. So I've been teaching classes with the Kanata Art Club and recently for the Ottawa School of Art, and I have been asked by the Canadian Society of Painters and Watercolor to be one of these presenters for an online watercolor workshop. And the one I'll be offering is December 10th, December 11th, and December 12th. So, of course, you know, the way these things go, there's no wrong way to do art until you get into one of my courses and find out that's not the way I asked you to do it. Of course, that's not what we'll do, but my teaching style, I teach correct principles and let you govern yourself. So this particular workshop, we're going to be focusing on masking techniques. Now, I'm a landscape artist, and I really like to tackle difficult things. And so I find that masking techniques have become an important part of what I do. And so we'll share some things as I go along here. Now, of course, when we talk in 2020, when we talk masking techniques, we're not talking about this. This isn't the mask you wore to school this morning. No, this one's way cooler. I traded mine to Taylor. He traded his with Hunter. So that's not the masking we're talking about. Years ago, in my university years, I studied fine art. And once, of course, I got into the working world, I found that my paints went aside and it didn't touch them for many, many years. But when I found myself getting close to retirement, I decided it was time to get my paints out again. And I kind of felt like I was starting at the beginning. So I had to find some books to help me get going again. And I found this great book by Gordon Mackenzie, full of super techniques. And one of the things I picked up from Gordon was this whole idea of using packing tape as a masking tool. And I've come to really like it as we go into that. So, of course, we're all familiar with masking fluid, and you may or may not be familiar with the idea of a masking pen. This is a really great little tool. You can get a fairly fine line that's quite consistent, and I find it very, very helpful. But we're going to focus mostly on this whole idea of using the packing tape. Now, this is the kind of tape that you can buy at the post office. You can buy it at Canadian Tire. That's kind of what we're after. So in our course, in our workshop together, we're going to paint at least 2 paintings, maybe 3. Depends how fast the class moves along. And we're going to move from some simple applications to some more complex applications. And in this case, I'll just show you quickly the kinds of ways I like to use this. This is more of the simple one. When I go to paint a background, I typically paint my backgrounds first. I really like to be able to mask off a lot of foreground things so I can get my brush right in there. I'm not having to slow down and make my way around edges and worry about drying edges on the other end, etc., etc. I can just run my brush, get it in there, and make it work. And in this case, here's a little painting I did. It's a rocky shoal with a little lake, and then the forest in the background. So when I painted the forest, you can see I did a very wet application. And I used my spray bottle a few times. I stood it up and let the water run, turned it upside down, let the water run. And in doing that, I never had to worry about crossing that line. And I was free to do these kinds of things and make some things happen. I can splatter, I can do whatever when I've got the other things masked off. And once I had that masked off, then I cut out the part that was covering the rock and just isolated the water itself. This allowed me to run my brush all the way over the rocky area with smooth strokes. It allowed me to splatter. It allowed me to do all kinds of things that I didn't have to worry about messing up that water feature in the painting. And it turned out not too bad. So here's another example of isolating areas. I masked off the whole water feature in this painting to allow me to brush and texture the rock area. And I did a lot of splattering and splashing and moving my brush around, etc., etc. And it was really nice not to have to worry about the water and getting anything on that. When I paint like a distant tree line, the way I like to do it is I will put my brush on its side and I roll my brush along. And so very, very lightly touching that thin brush, I can get these pine-looking things, or I can get this nice crumbly edge on the top of a set of trees. But when I do that and brushes sideways, I really don't have opportunity to look and see where my paint's coming down below. So if I have actually masked that off, I don't have to worry about that. It's wonderful. I can just run that brush. It doesn't matter if I'm spilling paint down below. And I find it's very effective to have the masking tape in place there. You can see here's another example where I've been able to isolate the snow line from the tree line in behind. And again, I could just get in there. I could throw color around. I could move my board around and just make it work. On this painting, I had actually masked off the rooftops. And again, you can see I could get right in there with my brush and make some things happen. And again, I can maintain those nice crisp edges on the rooftops. So you can't always get the same real crisp line with masking fluid that you can with this masking tape. And that's one of the reasons I like it. There are certain applications where I want it, that nice crisp line. So here's a couple other thoughts. Backgrounds. Again, I said earlier, I typically like to paint my backgrounds first. And in this painting, you can see I had taped off the rail fence in the front. I could run a nice even wash in the back. I could let some colors smoosh around back in there. I used some of that plastic wrap over it and got a kind of a nice effect back in there. Was happy with that. And then I cut out the rocks. So again, I could run my brush through there. So I'm getting some foreground and some background things that the tape is helping me to work very, very well. So this was kind of fun, just to run the brush through, etc. And by the time I pulled the tape off, there's what I had. Foreground, background painted, and then all I had to do is fill in the middle, and it was just worked out really nice. So again, there's an application of how to go at that. Now, in our workshops, I mentioned we'll get a little bit more complex. This is quite complex. This is one of the more complex paintings I've done using this masking technique, and it was fun to do, but it was very time consuming. So in this painting, there's actually a foreground, a middle ground, and a background through that forest. And I wanted it to be distinct between the two because I wanted that sunlight to be catching the outer edges of the forest. So what I did is I put the packing tape over the whole painting. I cut it all out so that anything that was going to be foreground was covered in the tape. Then I went and I had some window holes that went through to the back of the forest and you could see out beyond. So I painted those. You can see those here. And then I painted that whole area in kind of I used some purples, some blues, some burnt siennas, and just kind of a mid-range color through that whole area. And then with masking fluid, I masked a whole set of twigs and branches that would be my middle ground. And then I came back into here and put a real dark backdrop color in there. And you can see that whole area in behind in the middle ground. There's a whole tangled and twisted set of branches and twigs, etc., going through that area. And I loved it. I love the effect that I got. And again, now once I pulled the tape off, I just had to paint the foreground where the sunlight hit, and I was quite happy with the effect of that. Here's another more complex one. This was a great barn that I found in British Columbia. We were driving down the road and came around the corner, and there it was, and it was just beautiful. It was old, dilapidated, and moss all over it, and all these great holes in the roof. So I climbed inside the barn, which it wasn't really in good condition. I probably shouldn't have done that, but I climbed up this rickety old ladder and got my head up into this upper area and got this photograph and brought it back. I was so excited to paint it. So when I painted it, you can see what I did is I ran the tape, I cut out all of the sky holes, and then I painted the sky all the way through that area so I could get a nice consistent flow of my colors, etc. there. Pulled the tape off, retaped it, and this time covered up all the sky holes and allowed me to just be very free in running all these fun, bright colors through that whole area. And then I was able to paint the details and achieve what I did. So you can go very simple, you can go very complex, and it's a great tool. It's a really great tool. So if any of you are interested in joining us for this course, here's a quick material list. Of course, your paints, your brushes, your palette, some packing tape, and a sharp X-Acto knife. I've had some students come with knives that weren't sharp, and it just rips, it tears, and it's frustrating. So you want to make sure you've got a nice sharp one. Bring some masking fluid as well, and please note, I've had students come to class bringing in their Fabriano and some other brands of paper, and they'll always be frustrated because most other papers can't handle the tape. They'll actually tear. So I insist, if you're going to join us, you really need to bring some Arches 140-pound paper only. There's 300-pound is good, but again, because the tooth is as rough as it is, it's hard to get it to burnish down enough that you won't get water leaking underneath. So 140-pound paper is what I recommend. Arches, please bring Arches. Sketchbooks and pencils. So my preferred colors in my palette, I've got some blues, some cobalt, some ultramarine, some Windsor. My reds, alizarin crimson, permanent rose. Raw sienna, some areola and yellow, some burnt sienna. A couple of greens I really like are Hooker and Windsor green. I really like Windsor green. Sepia, indigo for my darks, and Chinese white. So if you're looking for some colors, there's just a few suggestions. And of course, there's so many great colors. You don't have to follow my palette at all. So again, just to reiterate, the online watercolor workshop will be December 10th, December 11th, December 12th. To register, go to the www.CSPWC website. That's the Canadian Society of Painters in Watercolor website. There are limited spots available. We're just going to limit this to 12 because we're going to do some critiques, and we're going to try to do more one-on-one and do what we can to kind of coach as we go along with our painting. We'll cover a lot of techniques. The masking just happens to be one we'll focus on. Registration fee is $150 for CSPWC members and $175 for non-members. That's a pretty great price for 8 hours of instruction. So we hope you're able to join us. We hope this is appealing to you, and I look forward to getting to meet lots of you. It'll be kind of fun, especially the whole idea of across Canada. That's going to be really fun to gather together and get our brushes out and have some fun together. So we'll look forward to meeting you, and plan to watch the website for further workshops because there'll be numerous ones coming out. So thanks so much. Look forward to meeting with you.